What is your absolute worst meeting the parents story? Dated a girl for just a bit. No plans at all to meet her parents at this point. We had just finished freaking for the first time when she got a call from her mum. Apparently they had a little much to drink and needed a sober ride home. She asked if I minded and I didn't, so we headed to the bar to get them. They were kind enough to be outside waiting for us when we got there. They were both leaning back on a railing above some concrete steps leading to an outside basement entrance. She waves at them and they wave back. Her dad lost his balance and went backwards over the railing. Her mom looked over and just started wailing. Made her stay in the car and call 911 while I went to see what happened. He landed just right on the corner of one of the stairs and split his skull wide open, dead before I ever said a word to him. That relationship didn't last very long. My husband and I are older, 40s, and had been dating about a year before I met his parents for the first time. They live on the other side of the country and flew out to visit him. His ex-girlfriend found out and showed up at the restaurant, sat down, and dominated the conversation with all of the memories she had with them and my husband. Awkward as heck. They can't stand her, but are polite people. Anyway, this chick is a hot mess. I was invited to a former boyfriend's house for dinner to meet his parents. When I got there, his father wasn't yet home from work, so we decided to go for a walk. Boyfriend's mother told us to be back to the house by 5, so we were playfully racing each other back so as to make it in time. I got to the door a few paces ahead of him, opened the door, and found myself face to face with his dad, who was standing stark naked in front of the door. I turned around and hid around the corner. The father kind of yelped and ran down the hall, and we were both mortified. Turns out he came home and was getting ready to shower when the phone rang, so he answered it naked since he hadn't expected us back yet. TLDR. Saw his dad naked before I even saw him naked. I met my ex's mom when I was 15. They were a highly Catholic family and he wasn't allowed to date, so I would go over after school until it was about time for them to get home. So we're making out and my shirt and bra come off, which was pretty escalated for us. Then we heard a car door slam. He grabs my shirt and bra, hands them to me and tells me to go hide in his closet. So I do, shirtless. His mom and him talk for what seems like forever just outside the door. She tells him she's gonna go take a nap, so to be quiet. After she went in her room, he came and got me. Right as I am trying to get my bra on, she steps out of her room and sees me. We broke up soon after. TL. Doctor got caught by super Catholic mom shirtless in her son's closet. Not so much a story, but before I met his mom, my ex said to me my mom is like a shark. She can smell fire, so just, like, don't be scared. Oh, okay. Thanks, now I feel more confident about the impending encounter. My ex-boyfriend wanted me to meet his parents, and he told me they wanted to meet me too. We decided to drive up to their place in the Bay Area. We lived in Orange County at the time, for Thanksgiving. I'm white, and he, and thus his parents, are Chinese. I normally wouldn't mention this, but apparently my whiteness made them not approve of me, and therefore not actually want to meet me. I didn't know they didn't want to meet me, otherwise I wouldn't have driven 6 hours and showed up at their house. When we knocked on their door, his mother answered, looked at me and said, in Cantonese, I told you not to bring the white girl here. More was said in Cantonese, I understood none of it. To save money, his parents did not have the boiler on, nor did they have heat in the house. Not having a boiler meant not having hot water, and therefore not having showers. To remedy this, they had a membership at 24-Hour Fitness, where they went every night to have a shower. They insisted that we go to 24-Hour Fitness for a shower, literally 15 minutes after showing up at their house. 24-Hour Fitness has communal showering. I'm absolutely terrified of communal showering. I had to get naked with my boyfriend's mother, 15 minutes after meeting her. At that point, she had never spoken a word to me in English. The first actual communication she showed me was to thrust a hairdryer in my hands. Anyway, the next few days were excruciatingly uncomfortable. Next to nothing was said in English at all, and I felt like everybody hated me. I spent several days just being as quiet, submissive, and polite as possible. I was sent to his mother's garden to pull weeds in the sun for a few hours, and after that she apparently began liking me. Later in the week she decided I needed a checkup at the doctor. For what reason? I don't know. Turns out she scheduled me for a pelvic exam, conducted by a man who I don't know, a man who spoke in really broken English. I explained to her that I was not comfortable with any of this. It was horrible and embarrassing. TLDR. I got naked with my boyfriend's mom 15 minutes after meeting her. She hated me. Later she scheduled me for a freaking pelvic exam and didn't bother explaining to me what was happening until we were there. I didn't think this would get this much visibility. He's totally going to see this if he's a Redditor. I hope he isn't. You win. My ex's mom surprised him with a visit while we were middle of a freaking session. My clothes somehow ended up all over the apartment, so I had to come out and greet her wearing nothing but his shirt and pretending it was a dress. She knew. Did I mention she was one of my bosses? Met the father at BF's hockey game. He was sweet and bought me a hot chocolate and himself a coffee. About 5 minutes later he gets booted from the arena for arguing with the ref and throwing his coffee at the ref's face. Throws hot chocolate. Dad, son, she's a keeper. His mom asked us if we were dipping Winkies. Please bear in mind I'm a female. And said if he ever needed condoms for us to tell her we're hungry for Hardee's and she'd know what we meant and wouldn't have to explain further. And that she would either give us money for or go out and buy us condoms. I was 14 at the time. Found out years later that she became pregnant and had an abortion at 13. She didn't want us to have to make that decision. So she really was just trying to be helpful. But it was a little much the very first time meeting her. I dated a Korean guy for a month or so in high school. I went to his house after school one day and encountered his dad on the sidewalk before we made it there. He looks at me, looks at his son, and begins pointing at me and yelling at him in Korean. I had to awkwardly stand there for about 5 minutes of them going back and forth before we parted ways and I just went home. Turns out he didn't want him dating a non-Korean. I'm white. I dated a Chinese boy for over 2 years. We had known each other for more than 10. I got his parents into a free screening of a movie and my BF tried to introduce us. It had always been weird not meeting them when we were growing up, and I extend my hand. They both walked away. If you didn't want your son to be friends with white people, you shouldn't have moved to the US. Meeting my now fiancee's mom for the first time, a few months after we had started dating. She makes a comment about us making babies, half joking, and I nervously reply, "It's okay, we're enjoying practicing for now." Cringe. Sitting at dinner with the girlfriend and her parents, just met them 10 minutes earlier, having casual conversation when I sneeze farted. I tried to play it cool but we all knew what happened. The worst part was about 30 seconds after it happened, after everyone had moved on, when the smell crept in. Her parents had an RV and were on vacation when we met. When they returned home I was fricking her in the shower. Her mom didn't expect anyone to be at the house with her and just walked in. We had fricked everywhere in the house and she was expecting them home the next day. Her dad introduced me to his 357 and told me to get the frick out of his house. I left. My worst meet the parent situation was several years ago. I walk into his house and notice framed photos on the wall. All of them were stills from when they were on the show Wife Swap. That in and of itself is no big deal, until I saw the episode. But then father approached me and I stuck out my hand to shake and he just looks me up and down, turns to his son and says, "Is she a subscriber to the Way?" Later on we are all having dinner and his sister is telling the parents how she heard I was a W and they attempt to evangelize me. Went to pick her up, and her mother was a parole officer. She photocopied my driver's license and made me wait around while she phoned somebody at the station to check my record. I was 16 and it was winter formal. That's illegal. Her dad waved from across the room, and I happened to be walking towards him and landed the most awkward high five of my life. Please God tell us his reaction. That's priceless. Current boyfriend has extremely Christian and somewhat square parents. They're very sweet, albeit sheltered. So we have a running joke that he uses me for nothing more than a CM bucket. So he texts and tells me he is at his parents' house. Unbeknownst to me, he hands his iPhone to his mom to look up a brownie recipe at the exact moment that I text him, tell your parents your CM bucket says hello, which of course popped up. She purportedly shrieked and he now has a cracked screen. Show her damn lie autocorrect.com and then say cute monkey or other equally nauseating cutesy name. Autocorrected to CM bucket. Free and clear. I met my wife online back in 1995 when I was 23 and she was a 19-year-old college student. She lived 9 hours away and I had no car, so when it was my turn to visit her, I got a cheap plane ticket. She came to pick me up at the airport around midnight but parked her car in the wrong place. We returned to her spot to find that the car had been towed away. We took a cab to the impoundment lot and discovered that they would not release the car to us because her parents owned the car. My poor long distance girlfriend had to call her parents around 1 AM and ask them to drive to the impoundment lot, which was an hour away from their house, to get her car out so the two of us could drive back to her apartment for illicit unmarried relations. When her parents arrived, I introduced myself to her dad, shook his hand, and said I'm sorry we couldn't have met under better circumstances. He just grunted at me. Sounds like he wasn't a night person. I was dating this girl for about 3 months and got her pregnant. We decided it was best if we just got married. I was 27, she was 20. I drove to my parents' house to tell them at the same time she went to her parents' house to tell them. I offered to go with her, but she said you don't know my dad, which was true because while she had met my parents I had never met her parents. Sitting at my parents' house listening to them tell me how I was throwing my life away, the phone rings. It was my girlfriend. She said I needed to go over to her parents' house because they wanted to meet me. I showed up at their house and was escorted to the living room where I was asked to sit in a chair in the middle of the room. Her family sat in a semicircle around me and proceeded to grill me for 2 hours. What were you thinking? You're 7 years older than her. You some kind of pervert? How do you plan on supporting our daughter and grandchild? On and on and on. That was 20 years ago. I'm posting this from my in-laws' house sitting next to my 19-year-old daughter. I'm still very much in love with my wife and her family still hates me and sees me as the dirty old man that took their daughter away from them. To clarify, we don't live with our parents. Never did. We just happened to be there for a birthday party. It was uncomfortable as it ever was, so I was browsing Reddit from my tablet and decided to respond to the thread. I always enjoy it when these kinds of stories get a happy end. I know way too many of this kind that end in shambles and sorrow. Congratulations. I had to drive her to her mother who was giving birth in hospital. That was when I first met her parents. Bonus points. She named the child the same name as me. Doctors, it's a boy. Mother, I'll call him Joan. Mother, to daughter, who's this with you? Daughter, mum, meet Joan. In hindsight, I could have pretended I was a child that had traveled back from the future to witness his own birth. Frick, that would be weird. She obviously would have proceeded to cut her baby's hand off to see if yours disappeared. Oh, I have a good one. It's not a relationship type meet the parents, but it's the worst experience I've had with someone's parents outside of my dysfunctional family. My friend is the son of one of the physics professors at my university, so when I got introduced to my future instructor, because I decided to major in physics, I was forced to make some small talk. He also prepared a lovely dinner for us too. I had no clue he had 3 other children in the family, so he started talking about them. We talked a lot about how his oldest was in Germany and his second oldest skipped a grade. My friend. I started spacing out and instead focused on the food and how good it was. At this time, he mentioned that his youngest daughter was at Girl Guides, and right when he said that, I let out the most satisfying mmm to signify that I was really enjoying his food. I then clued back into the conversation and said Girl Guides, yeah, I like them. Which was a mistake when I quickly realized what I had just said. I could see my friend holding back laughter, but I just sat there and ate my food in silence. He gave me this really weird look and I don't think he's looked at me the same since, even after being my instructor for 6 upper level physics classes. We never spoke of it again, but my friend likes to bring it up every so often. TLDR. I meet future physics professor over dinner and his first impression of me is that I'm some creep who really enjoys Girl Guides. Our youngest son is in the Boy Scouts. MMMM. Like them too. She only had her mother. Her father passed away when she was young. I go to her house to wait for her to get home and meet her mom. She has a bottle of Dewars on the table. Her mom was pleasant, not drunk at the time, and she offers me a drink. I normally don't drink the hard stuff, but I decided to be polite and take it. Her mother gets a phone call. Apparently my new GF is going to be about 2 hours late. The mother sits down next to me on the couch and tells me. Then the unthinkable happens. Her mom, not very attractive by the way, puts her hand on my upper thigh. She says we have 2 hours if I'm interested and smiles. Now at the time I was only 18, but I had enough common sense to GTFO real quick. Meet up with my GF later on that night and don't even bring up what happened. What good could it do, right? 2 days later my GF shows up at my house and is wide-eyed. Her breath is labored. She ran to my house. She tells me that one of her best friends just told her that he slept with her mom. I ask when it happened, and she said 2 nights ago. So made the right choice. Take care all. My mind is telling me no, but my body is telling me GTFO, not R. Kelly. When I was 15 I met my then GF's father as he drove us home from a school dance. I had my arm around her. He asked me if my arm was broken. I replied that it was not. He asked me if I wanted it to stay that way. I removed my arm from around my GF. The first time my alcoholic ex was in my family's home, he was, well, drunk, and lying on the dining room floor. My mom walked in and he squinted up at her and said, "Hey, yo, B, lick my nuts." The ex after him was a much better person. First time at the house, he's meeting my family's dog, who is greeting him with copious amounts of slobber. In walks my grandfather. I introduce, they go to shake hands, and the ex tells my grandfather, "Sorry, I've got dog slobber on my hands." My grandfather doesn't miss a beat and tells him, "That's okay, I'm sure you've had worse." My lord, I almost choked on my drink when I read the alcoholic ex story. That's like something from an episode of Arrested Development, or It's Always Sunny. I kinda want backstory about this ex, and then what happened in the aftermath. It was the first time I had ever gone to a girlfriend's house to hang out and meet her parents. It was the summer before my 8th grade year. Needless to say, hormones, so I was an awkward, squeaky belly teenage boy. Her parents were really excited to meet me because I was the first boy her daughter had ever introduced them to, so they planned a family cookout so I could meet all the family. I got there around 5 p.m. and, because it was in the country in Ohio, all the adults were already drunk. To avoid as many drunk family members as possible, my girlfriend and I decided to swim in her pool for most of the night. At around 9 p.m., most of her family had left, only her parents remained. They were inside, still drinking, and me and my girlfriend decided we would have some naughty time in the pool, which in 8th grade meant me taking off my trunks and her taking off her bottoms. We hid them under the towels on the deck so it wouldn't be too obvious that I was naked. After about 10 minutes of fun skinny dipping, her parents decided to come out to check on us. However, in their drunken stupor, they decided instead to get in the pool with us. My trunks and my girlfriend's bottoms weren't easily accessible while remaining entirely in the pool, so I had to swim around naked while my girlfriend's parents were in the pool. I never knew how good of a swimmer I was until that day, because they never found out. However, I didn't date her for much longer after that. TLDR. The first time I ever meet a so's parents I accidentally ended up swimming naked with them. They never found out. When I began dating my girlfriend I ended up meeting her mother fairly quickly and we got along swell. However, it wasn't until nearly 3 years later that I ended up meeting her father as he was overseas working. Now, a bit of background on her father. He was a very non-nonsense, straightforward, Buddhist, Asian, engineer who trained zealously in martial arts. He had raised my girlfriend more akin to a son than a daughter, so his expectations in any male his daughters chose as boyfriend were rather high. Marizo with the daughter I chose to date because she was both his firstborn and the one he invested the most effort into. Maybe a month before her mother's birthday, my girlfriend tells me that her dad will be coming down to stay for a few months so I would finally be properly introduced. Beforehand she had only mentioned me in passing. Needless to say, I'm a tad nervous as her father has been built up in my mind to be an amalgamation of Bruce Lee, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bill Gates, and Hercules. It also doesn't help that I was the last thing an Asian parent would want their daughter to bring home. An arts major with shaggy hair who dressed like a bohemian and spent a great deal of the time distracting said daughter. A very talented molecular biology student with video games, city exploration, naps, laziness, pleasures, shenanigans, and fripperies. The day finally arrives and, as had become tradition at her household, I brought a cake to celebrate. Lo and behold, who else opens the door but my girlfriend's father? To be fair, he wasn't nearly as big or as muscled as I imagined. He was in his late 50s, but his build denoted that he had seen quite a few fights in his day. Cauliflower ears, thick muscled torso, toned arms, etc. And, like his offspring, he wore that signature scowl on his face. Thankfully I have the unique ability to remove that scowl from my girlfriend's face. Her father gave me the once over, takes the cake from my hands, gives me a $20, and shuts the door. I'm stunned for a good 15 seconds, but I knock again to try and figure out what's up. Her father again appears, scowl unmoved, and glares at me before shouting back into the apartment. Mazral's girlfriend, grab me my wallet. The delivery boy wants a tip without going over the laughter and horror that my lady friend and her mother had when seeing who the delivery boy was. That was my first encounter with my girlfriend's father. TLDR. I was mistaken for a greedy delivery person. I'm queen of bad first impressions. I think the worst of it was senior year of high school. I was out drinking with friends and a guy I had been hooking up with. We ended up climbing onto a school tin roof and continued to get plastered. The guy I was seeing thought it'd be a good idea to try to run across the roof. Ended up slipping and sliding down. He fell 2 stories straight on his face. We seriously thought he died. There was blood everywhere, and none of his jackass friends wanted to take him to the hospital, so I did. Fast forward a shitload of stitches, and hours later I realized my parents would be pissed if I came home that late. He insisted his mom would be fine with me over, and that we'll just have to go through his window so the front door alarm wouldn't wake anyone up. So I stayed the night, and slept in nothing but a bra and underwear. Fast forward 8 AM I wake up to what the frick is this? You must be Blumnop. Why the heck are you staying over? Mom, I'm sorry, it won't. Holy crap, what the heck happened to your face? Get out of my house. Worst experience of my life. TLDR. We were drunk. He fell off a roof. I took him to the ER, and mom walked in the morning to me in my underwear, and his face looking like he was mauled by a cougar. The first time I met my fiance's mother, we had to walk past her to go to his bedroom, and he said, "Hi mom, this is Nancy Skills." I said hi, she said hi, and that was it. We were more formally introduced in the morning, but the next time we saw each other I came stumbling drunk into the house. Told her how much I loved Buffy. She was watching it, and had a 5-minute conversation with their dog about how soft he was. 2.5 years later, she's going to be my mother-in-law. And when her son and I were having a pretty serious argument a while ago, she said to him, "If you break up with her, I'm trading you for her." Well, at least she likes you. I had a one-night stand and long story short his dong broke. He had to be hospitalized for almost a week. He introduced me to his parents a few days after being released. It went like this. Mom, Dad, this is the girl that broke my dong. This might sound weird, but if I was the dad, I'd just be like, she's a keeper. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.